Mimi looks so tired tonight.
Mm.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. This is Let's Talk Station, series Shenanigans. And we are so happy to be here tonight. We have a really great guest for you tonight. His name is Benjamin Franzen, and he's got an incredible story that we just can't wait to dive into. Quentin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm all right. I see his moniker is Free Ben.
Free Ben, and we're going to get into why he uses that handle.
This might be the show, huh?
This might be the show. That's either the show that like boosts us or gets us canceled. I don't know which, but we're all good with it.
Yeah. The people from above already got the show an hour and a half late, so never know
I
what happened.
know.
So we'll see. All right.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great show. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
Hi, welcome. And I would like to welcome everybody to the room. Thank you for waiting for us as we got a double opening. That was incredible. Welcome, Ben. How are you doing tonight?
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for postponing the show for a little while today while we had some time issues, but it's great to have you here. I've been very excited about this interview. You have such an amazing story.
Thank you.
Okay, so the very first question that I want to do is there's a lot of our audience who's not aware of who Ben is. So Benjamin Franzen, please let us know who you are.
Well, as you said, my name is Benjamin Franzen, and I actually had a lot of fundraising events for me when I was wrongfully incarcerated for a long time. And there was like a Free Ben and a helpbenjamin.org, and there were these sites that friends and families and friends of friends and families had been putting together. So my current media identity that has grown out of that, it went from Free Ben to Ben Free. So I have a podcast called the Ben Free Podcast. I should mention that my first social media post was a LinkedIn post about a year ago. And I wrote on there, in 1974, I was born at UCLA Hospital. Last week, at the age of 48, I was accepted into UCLA. I'm living proof that it's never too late to start a new chapter. And I hashtagged, without having any idea what a hashtag was, UCLA and second chances. And about 2.5 weeks later, a friend of mine, AJ, called me and said, "Hey, have you looked at the number of views on that post?" I said, "I just found out what a post is. I don't know how to look at views on a post." So he sent me a screenshot, and it said that over 1 million people had viewed it. And I stood sort of stuck on stupid, like, why? He said, "I don't know. I guess people were resharing it." So right at that time, about 3 or 4 days after I was released, after they finally ironed out what really happened, because not to bury the lead, but I was originally arrested for 2 counts of first-degree murder. They overturned my case on appeal twice in the same courtroom. I had to have 3 trials, several years apart. And I had to fight with the parole board back and forth. But I was finally released. They finally admitted that it had not been me. And after lots of struggles, and I think I counted 19 lawyers by the time it was all over, and 18 years and 3 months incarcerated, I was released on December 10th, 2021. And a few days after that, I was on a friend's podcast, a guy who owns this studio in Pasadena called the world famous Coin Academy. A lot of rappers have podcasts there, like Yuck Mouth from Northern California. Some of the guys from NWA have one called Above the Law. And anyway, I was on his podcast, and right about this time was when that LinkedIn post went viral. And he called me and said, "Man, I'm so sick of answering emails about your story. I'm just going to give you your own show." So I went down to the studio, and he said he was going to give me a show. And I said, "Well, what kind of show is it?" Looking around at this big place. And he said, "Well, it's like a podcast. And I said, oh, cool. What's a podcast?
Right.
He said, well, you're the first person on planet Earth to have a studio give them their own show and not know what the hell the show was, but never mind. You'll figure it out on the fly like you're doing everything else. So I did, and we started a show, and we're in season 4 now. We are going this month to video. We've been filming in video the whole time, but it wasn't eligible for public consumption. What happened is I started doing a lot of restorative justice work and working with people who go inside of prisons for purposes of literacy or legal help or even just emotional therapy, those kinds of things. And I had a lot of those type of guests on my show. And in that process, one of the programs inside called Bars with a Z behind bars that I've told you before is literacy through rap and poetry. And what's unusual about these guys is one of the 2 founding members used to be with Cypress Hill and has quite a lot of talents involving rapping, but also branding and planning and scheming. I call him my evil genius in my pocket because he's constantly in there working on these things. His name is Ghostwrite Mike. He prefers pseudonym, and his young cellmate that is also a writer is named The Mundo Press. So I started working for them. They brought a friend of theirs, brought a guest to be on my show, and he was going to talk about what it was like growing up without a father because his father was in jail, and I wanted to get that perspective of that kind of mass incarceration separation. And in the process, he said he could do a song, and I thought, oh, well, I haven't been doing song. I was just going to interview him, and I said, well, what do you got? So we started listening to his first song, and it was so good that I became suspicious and started Googling and realized that the song he wanted to do on my show had about 5 million streams, and his last 3 collaborations were with Nipsey, J. Cole, Nas, and Kendrick Lamar, and he has 3 Grammy nominations. So
Wow.
on the fly, we put him. I saw there is a 30-foot high definition screen over there I've never used. Maybe I should turn it on. So we went over there, turned a pretty red color, put a boom mic to give him kind of a studio look, and we agreed on the fly to give him that recording as a cutout and just said, hey, but when you promote it, all you have to do is tag the coin, the studios, and everything else, and also the bars behind, and you should be okay. So
that's incredible. Okay, so hang on. I'm gonna back up the truck because we have so many questions for you, and
sure.
And I don't want to lose sight of any of the details. So take us back to you being wrongly accused. What scenario got you into the situation that you became wrongly accused and taken to jail?
Sure. And I'd like to be clear about that. I spent my first 3 years locked up because I knew that I did not do what they said,
Right.
feeling as if I was 100% innocent. But some of my journey has been realizing that no one is really 100% innocent. And, so you spend some time karmically. Is this something I did wrong that I didn't get caught for? Is this something just personally I did wrong in my journey? What is it? And I did know the person involved. I even knew the circumstance. It wasn't like a wrong place, wrong time DNA kind of situation. But the victims were burglars, and I'm going to add a little light here or something. There we go. The victims were burglars, and they broke into this house and were caught breaking in. So when I got to the house, the burglars had just been captured breaking in. They were sitting there, and I ended up getting into a fight with one of the burglars briefly, and the person who lived there, Shane, that was my co-defendant, he lived in the house, and he killed both of the victims. Now, I was 29. I had never been arrested, and the guy was so scary to me when I saw what happened all of a sudden on the fly that I basically ran and hid. I didn't want anything to do with the guy. I didn't want to do anything with it. And I figured out afterwards that there were maybe 6 different things I did that were illegal during and after. For example, if you stand by while someone who's sitting on a couch, it doesn't matter that they're not tied up or anything like that. technically that is a false imprisonment. Now, if the person just broke into that house, it's a little bit gray area. And, there's a time period there where that is a citizen's arrest. And then there's a time period immediately following that if they've been there for too long and someone decides not to call the police, etc. But the fight broke out during that first portion while they were technically being falsely imprisoned. Now, this kind of false imprisonment carries either probation or like 6 months in jail, not the death penalty or life. But there were separate issues. There were things that my co-defendant did. There were the fact that I, even when I realized everything that had happened, didn't come forward because I was terrified of him and for my own family's sake, etc. But so I had to deal with the fact that there were definitely things that I did that were wrong, but murder wasn't anywhere near any of them. And the prosecution knew this the entire time. They either lied about or fabricated evidence, which is why my case was overturned on appeal for being unconstitutional twice. So it was a difficult situation, obviously,
Right.
but I actually, strangely, I found myself. People in the prison institution have tried to use me sort of as an example of how prison can rehabilitate you. I would argue that I was rehabilitated despite prison, not because of it. And
so if we go back, what were you charged for, even though it was overturned, but what did they charge you for, and what was the penalty?
I was originally charged with kidnapping,
Okay.
which was a federal charge. And that they ultimately dismissed that case for lack of evidence and jurisdictional issues. But it was basically just a head fake because the feds refiled and the state picked it up. I wrote an article about that process, which recently got published in the Vera Institute of Justice. It's called From Frying Pan to Fire, for that exact reason.
Wow. And so it was first kidnapping, and then they changed it.
They dismissed it, and then they refiled and charged for 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Okay, and then so you were charged and found guilty. And what was your punishment? What was the sentence?
Life with, well, first I was fighting the death penalty.
Right.
And then they finally took the death penalty off the table. And then it was life without possibility of parole times 2 consecutively.
Wow. How stressful was that for you?
I have to say that I didn't really believe it. I don't know if if it comes from being a child of an alcoholic that my level of denial is, Herculean or what, but I didn't believe it. I did find my own faith. I also honestly refuse to believe it. I still believe that our minds are powerful instruments, and that if I believe that we can't, I don't think we can will other people to do things against their will, but I do think that we can manifest eventualities. And I refuse to believe that was going to happen. And I, at some point, decided, well, if I'm really believing that I'm going to get out, I need to start living each day right now as if I'm getting out. Right. So I started enrolling in school. I started taking some of these self-help classes and just trying to understand parts of me that I didn't learn myself. I found out that AA never really had much to do with me. I don't drink. Even when I did use drugs, it was like ecstasy with 3 kids wearing fuzzy baggy pants at a rave or something. It wasn't snorting lines in the back of a party. Now, that isn't a better thing, but it is a different thing. So ultimately, I decided that I really needed to make some better decisions than the ones I had made before. I started taking all the different college classes through distance learning, and so much so that when I actually applied to UCLA about 1.5 years ago, by the time I applied, I had 9 associate's degrees, and UCLA was like, wow, what are we supposed to do with this? I said, I'm sorry, they didn't have 4-year degree programs. I had to just
pick the associate. Okay, so what were those associate degrees?
Oh, wow. At least some of them are humanities. Humanities was separate from arts and humanities, even though obviously there was overlap. There was one for science, there was one for math, and then math and science was like the engineering kind of math. There was the business. I got an associate's in business, a separate certificate in business because I was working on entrepreneurship. I was in a 9-month entrepreneurship course that was every day, all day for 9 months through a program called Defy Ventures. So that was pretty intense. And lastly, I went to Merced College and Fresno State. They finally started having in-person instruction. So Merced College came into the prisons. I had a couple of professors there that were really cool. I actually had them on my show via Zoom. And I had a chance to really work harder. I'd been trying the whole time, but it's distance learning is very different. Right. But having a professor right there work with you, I became the first incarcerated student at Merced College to get superintendent's honors, which is 60 units with a 4.0, and also outstanding English student of the year. And I will never forget the irony of that prize, because what I won for that while I was in a maximum security prison was a parking space next to the administration building at Merced College. Like, really? Talk about 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. You know?
Right. That's an incredible story. Absolutely incredible. So you go through the legal process. You had 3 trials in total.
Yes.
Is that correct? And then
they were between 5 and 6 weeks each too.
Okay, incredible. And so that is unbelievable. And so then they finally reversed the decision and said that you were not guilty.
And they reversed the decision twice. This third time technically is still on appeal. In fact, I was released on parole kind of out the side door while they ironed it out, but they wanted me to just drop it, which I did not do. My appeal is still very much active, but they did at least admit that they knew it wasn't me, that they had the story wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So I was paroled to an area in South Central Los Angeles, which is well known for many rap songs and gunshots, and it's not far from the truth. So, but then I was accepted in UCLA and I moved on campus, but they were so not worried about me that they never even bothered to change my address in the computer.
Oh.
So they would just call me every once in a while or, tell me to check in. But about 3 months ago, I had a new parole officer and he called and said, I need to do a home visit. I said, define home. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm in Westwood now, which is, it's a good 15 miles from, it's a completely different type of neighborhood also, but also just very far out of my area. He said, you moved without permission? And I said, no. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, look, if you and I develop a rapport, I promise not to throw you under the bus if you bend rules. By that same token, I will not do the same to your predecessors, but suffice it to say that everyone knows I'm here. And so he said, for what? I said, well, I'm at UCLA. He said, for what? I said, I'm a senior. He's like, you transferred from prison to UCLA. I said, yeah. And he hung up on me because he thought I was lying. But apparently he said something about, this guy tried to tell me that blah, blah, blah. So somebody else heard that story and said, are you talking about Franson? I said, wait, what? So he showed up here at my little apartment. I'll give you a dizzying tour of my little studio apartment put on by UCLA.
Nice.
My roommate there is Grogu. And this is the whole thing. So he walked in and said, he didn't believe it still. He said, do you have any kind of documentation that says that you go here? And I said, oh. So I reached over to this coffee table and said, does this count as a document? This thing that says I got in on the front, that's me right there. And he's like,
well, you hold it a little bit higher to show everybody because your name bar is there. There you go. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. And that counted, did it not?
He finally realized that, it wasn't all hype. And this was the actual story. This leads to the second half of the story here.
Okay.
See, it says there, the undefeated, and it talks about the story. The intro to the story is perhaps germane. It says, the chrysalis of any meaningful life consists of its challenges. Though pain and struggle are relative, I doubt many stories like mine will appear in university magazines. In 2003, I was arrested by the FBI. The government was seeking the death penalty. Every tale of slaying our proverbial dragons, of painful lessons learned, must start somewhere. This one begins with a burglary. So
Wow.
they initially said that it was going to be a student journalist was going to ghostwrite it, and that it was going to be first person for me. So I was trying to picture like 19-year-old journalism student waxing reflective from their 40s about the time that they fought the death penalty.
Right. And I know that you've written quite a bit, so you
Sure.
wrote that yourself, did you not?
Yeah, in fact, I'm the only one of the people of the story was called This Magic Moment, and so this is all different people's stories, all pretty inspiring stories too, about how each of us got in. And there was someone whose family was incarcerated in Iran for most of her life, and she came here and got in. Really interesting stories.
Absolutely incredible. I will speak to you about that offline because there's a lot I want to ask.
Sure.
Just give me 1 second. I just want to welcome everybody once again to the room. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. This is our wonderful guest, Benjamin Franston, and we are super excited about hearing more about his story just in a moment. I want to let you know that we value your being here, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. There's more than just one show that appears on this channel, and we want to make sure that you get them all to your fingertips when you're ready to see them. And I would also like to take a moment to thank our very silent but very well put together producer who's behind the scenes making sure this all happens for us.
Hi, Glenn.
So I want to know what the biggest thing that you had to overcome when you came out of prison and transitioned into the real world.
Social media.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same for everyone. Mine was kind of a weird baptism by fire because I had 269 Facebook friends, and those were ones that had been fostered, and my family and friends had been kind of monitoring the account. They would print it out and send it to me like every 4 months or something. So it took quite a long while. But when that first show came out, I went from 269 to 5,000 in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And my producers were handling my Facebook, and they said, well, we'll just accept everybody, which I now know was a bad idea. But at the time I thought, oh, okay, well, but so it was, 3,000 robots posing as strippers and whatnot. But I tried to go on a date when I first got out, and I did go on a date. We were sitting there at dinner, but I didn't know how to turn the notifications off. So at that rate, during that time period, I was getting somewhere around 140 friend requests an hour.
Wow.
And almost all of them are female names. Now, I now know probably most of those were not even real people, or they were guys or robots or whatever, but it just didn't look good.
No.
We're sitting there talking, and I was pretending that I didn't notice. And it was like, Gina, and I'm like, so finally the girl looks up and said, who are you? And I said, I'm not anybody, and I want to cry. I don't know what's happening right now. So while she was sitting there, I deleted the entire account and didn't go near Facebook for a month because I panicked. And the biggest adjustment is people's expectations are based on such a different time frame.
Right.
Like people say, I just texted you. I texted you 4 hours ago. And I was thinking, lady, I'm used to communication that takes 3 weeks one way. Like 4 hours ago. What are you even talking about? So that was really hard. The people's demands on my time and availability was confusing for me. Also trying to be in anything resembling a relationship. What is that like? Especially because my girlfriend is also a public figure to some extent. She's in marketing. She's in a lot of red carpet events. She did modeling and promo modeling for a lot of different things. So we both would we have each other's social media, but there were times I'd look and go, look, 463 likes that are all overly complimentary guys. What's that like? And she would have to deal with the same. I think that we've navigated that pretty well, but that was probably one of the biggest things. The other two are issues of space and entitlements.
Okay.
Like people do things sometimes here that they are used to being able to get away with that I have seen people get killed for. Like,
Okay.
so people do something as simple as just cutting in front of somebody in line at a store or something. And so that happens, and I find myself going, okay, and I just let it happen. But in my head, I'm picturing the time I saw somebody do that and get stabbed with a sharpened toothbrush. So those are the kinds of things that, the weird thing about those moments is your first thought is like, wow, people are really disrespectful out here. It's odd that everybody having some sharpened thing in their pocket practically makes people respectful. So
Facts.
now, I don't know if it's a real respect, but it
Yeah,
reads the same way.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's go back now to your podcast. So it's a really exciting podcast where you speak to people in prison situations.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
That is definitely
That's
how it started. I had my story then. My second guest was a man named Michael D. McCarty, who
Mhm.
has, I think, 2 different documentaries on him. He is a Black Panther who was very involved with the Rainbow Coalition when it first started. And he was a high-level martial artist. And he went through a lot of different things, traveling around for some of those various reasons. And at one point, he was so good at telling stories that at one point he met someone who gave him a card that said he was a professional storyteller. And he said, you can become a professional storyteller and people will pay you to do this. This is all I do anyways. So if you want to check out Michael's website, it is havemouthwillrunit.com.
That's a great
Michael is great.
That is great. That's fantastic.
But I met Michael because he teaches a class in prison called story creation.
Okay.
So we had storytelling classes about how to use props to tell stories, how better to tell them. So I started focusing on some of those things. I also did Toastmasters. The meeting I had right prior to this show was with one of the regional directors for Toastmasters who came into prison, saw me give a speech, and then asked if I'd be willing to give speeches for money later. So we've kept in touch, and he's been providing some mentorship in that regard. But of course, podcasting is also a form of public speaking. You learn to pause instead of saying or.
Right. So the podcast, if people would like to go and find it, is called Ben Free.
Ben Free Podcast. It is right now, this moment, available on, I think it's available on everything now. Spotify, the audio at least is available on Spotify, Apple, Audible, Amazon Music.
So, anybody who's out in watching land, if you would like to find that, it is available everywhere that you will find podcasts. And it is a very interesting podcast, by the way. So congratulations on that.
When we still have to rope you into traveling from Canada to beyond, by the way.
Yes, you do. And we can arrange that. Absolutely. So, and thank you for that. So I just want to also tap in. We don't have to spend a long time on this if you don't want, because there are a few other things that I know we want to speak about, but I want to make sure that we get this in because you are also an author. You co-wrote a book with your mother.
Yes.
Did you want to speak a little bit about that and let people know where they can find that as well?
Well, they can't find it yet.
Okay.
My mother wrote a book about, well, a partial manuscript specifically about her journey standing by me through the criminal justice system. When she first was doing so, I thought it was just catharsis. And as she started to write, I began reading the words and thought, oh no, this is much more than that. She talked about meeting my attorney and said, the more he talked, the less I knew. I was certain of only 2 things. My son would never murder anyone, and my country wanted to kill my child. And I thought, whoa. And so I started reading what she was writing. She brought it to her little sacred circle, a women's writers group. And after the 3rd week, one of the women in her group said, how long do you think the book's going to be, Robbie? And she said, what book? That one, the one in your hand, the one we are reading. She tried to explain that it wasn't a book. These were just pieces she was writing. And her friend said, yes, these pieces are called chapters.
Right.
So they discussed with her that she should enter this program, this contest put on by UCLA, ironically, or coincidentally rather, and Penn America. So Penn, I always thought Penn was for Prison Education Network because they seem to have so much to do with Penn. I only last week found out it actually stands for Poets, Essayists, and Novelists. But in any case, she entered the Penn Emerging Voices Fellowship for Narrative Nonfiction, and to her surprise, she won. So part of that contest was she got to read a couple of those chapters aloud at the LA Festival of Books, which is kind of a big deal, lots of agents and such.
Right.
And this, not to use a pejorative term, but she herself calls herself this, a chick lit author named Janet Fitch, who wrote White Oleander and a lot of other really good books. A fantastic writer. She heard just the prologue of my mother's writing, and went and grabbed an agent that she knew and said, "Hey, you got to hear this lady's writing. This is really great." So when my mom got back, she had an email from this agent named Betsy Amster. And when she looked her up, it was listing her as the #2 agent in LA at the time. And that's saying something.
Yes.
And she said, "I want to see more of your work." One of my friends, Janet Fitch, is a big fan of your work. And my mom said, "I don't have any work. What is happening?" And so, but her mentor from Penn, who was a guy named Kevin Starr, who was the California State Librarian and a Pulitzer nominee for a history book. He said, "Well, you got to get some work." So she started writing. She met with this agent. The agent signed her, and she wrote the first 147 pages. But then she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 2012, and the chemo made it too hard for her to write. So ultimately, she made me promise that I would finish her book before she passed in 2013. But I had a really hard time doing it. I would pick it up and drag this manuscript out from underneath my prison bunk, and pretty soon I was trying to write through my tears, and I just had to put it away.
Right.
But when my case was overturned for the second time in the same courtroom, which never happens, by the way, it doesn't even get overturned the first time, let alone the second time.
Right.
I mean, my case is so crazy that the judge for my case got caught lying and being involved in shady activities during the judiciary process and got subpoenaed. So I was in a habeas hearing after my second trial where my trial judge was on the stand getting cross-examined by my attorney. So my attorney would say, "Your Honor," and both judges would say, "What?" I thought, this is crazy. So I thought, is this normal? Maybe this happens. I don't know. And I hear all this whispering behind me, and I turned around and there were like 9 bailiffs at the same table going. And I said, okay, I guess it's not normal. And he got caught lying on the stand right there. And then he tried to make up excuses and finally just said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time." And my attorney turned around at me sitting in the chair and said, "It certainly has," and then sat down.
Right.
And so they overturned it, sent me back a third time. They had to try me for lesser charges, which I'm still hassling with, but nobody's calling me a murderer anymore. And to me, that was the win. You know?
That is a win. That is a win. As I had said to you when I invited you to be a guest on the show, and as I had told the producer, Clinton, when I spoke of you coming on the show, you have an incredible story, and it is so jaw-dropping at every single turn. It almost seems miraculously fiction, and it is incredible to listen to, knowing that it is all true. It is fantastic. And I
just heard Tom Clancy interviewed not long ago, because he also writes technical manuals sometimes based on jets and things like that. And they asked him what the biggest difference between writing fiction and nonfiction is. And he said, "That's easy. Fiction has to be believable."
Exactly. Exactly.
I was going to ask you, are we lapsing into poetry anytime in this interview? I had a little enough that I was ready to swing that way, depending on where you went.
If you would like to drop a poem, you're more than welcome to, or anything that you would like to give us. We're very open to that. We'd welcome that. Absolutely.
Excellent. Give me a minute to dust one off of my head, but
sure.
Good. So the tail end of that is I did write a draft of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I got to UCLA, and the English department reran the story that's there, but also talking about how proud they were that I was coming here, because at the end of that story, if you Google my name, Benjamin Franson, and UCLA newsroom, it pops up. But essentially, I had a hard time working on the book because I didn't know how it ended. So I went into the admissions office because I had 9 promotional emails for UCLA, but no acceptance. So I was like, what does that mean? Like, I got, hey, incoming students get 40% off for the first week. And I was, that's cool. Am I one though? I mean, what does this mean? So I went in and asked, and they said, well, what's your birthday? And I told them, and they said, well, that's not what we have down for you. And I said, damn it, I've been using the wrong birthday this whole time. So they looked through all their paperwork and finally and I said, okay, well, let's be honest here. I was in prison when I applied for this. And they said, oh, so I had I was dictating essays over the phone to someone, and they were typing in the essays. It's the only way I could do this. I only made it by the deadline by like 3 minutes. My guess is it asked that question at the end, and the guy doing it for me guessed. And they said, wow, okay, yeah, that would explain that. So they looked through some security things and said, okay, just a couple of security questions right here. What city were you born in? And I had to pause, and I said, well, I mean, I was born in that building right over there. I said, you were born at UCLA Hospital? And they looked down at the computer. Oh, there it is. Westwood. Welcome to UCLA. And then they handed me the printed. I was the only person that I know of that got a printed version of that,
Wow.
But right then, one of my little oddball spiritual experiences in life, I heard my mother's voice whisper amidst a sudden flash of goosebumps, this is how the book ends.
Oh,
And I thought, so
love it.
I knew I had to write it. So I applied for the narrative nonfiction class, the intro class, and I didn't get in. I got a form letter denial. And I thought, how did I not get into this class? It's not even an audition class. A Labrador could get into this class if it had a UCLA ID. And I called, and they said, oh, well, that one's too elementary for you.
Wow.
So what? I learned to write in a box, so I might be missing some fundamentals. I'd still like to take the class. And they said, no, we need that class for a freshman. I said, okay. So then they suggested I apply to this seminar class. So I applied to that, got another form letter denial. And I said, well, I mean, what does this mean exactly? And I tried to get into that class. They said you couldn't, but they read my stuff, and I was too advanced for that class. And they suggested I try one of the master's seminars. So I said, I'm not a master's student. I'm still an undergraduate. I'm just trying to write. And finally, they suggested I go to this one particular professor named Professor Almendinger, who had written a book. It was a memoir, and he knew about that. So I wrote him, and he said, can't do it. I'm on sabbatical. I've got use it or lose it sabbatical credits, but honestly, I think you might be too advanced for the classes we offer. I'm like, it's UCLA. I have never had a writing class. Like, I appreciate the backhanded compliments, but there's still rejections. This guy, undergraduate, I need to write. And I finally wrote the English department and said, hey, I'm not trying to bandy about the D word, but I'm starting to feel a little discriminated against for being too experienced. And at the age of 48, not likely to get any less experienced anytime soon. So what are we doing here? And they said, well, we'll try to find something. Maybe it'll be in a year. I said, I started with 9 associate's degrees. How long do you think I'm going to be here? I said, I'm starting to feel like Kwai Ching Kang, like the lone kung fu disciple wandering the desert looking for a master or something. So finally, they suggested I go talk to their hotshot novelist memoirist, a man named Justin Torres, who his first book, We the Animals, was just made into a movie. He just wrote another one called Blackout. Incredible writer, very, very sharp. And I met with him, and he said, well, look, I'm busy. I only take 2 students a quarter. I can't do it myself, but your story's interesting. I read it in the magazine, so I just wanted to talk to you. And he said, you should try PEN America's mentorship program. And I said, I did. If you go to pen.org, I actually won the Alingo Roman Prize for mentorship for an essay I wrote with my PEN mentor. He said, oh, well, you should try. And everything he named, I had already done. He said, they have a writing program at Columbia called the IWI. I said, right, Incarcerated Writers Initiative. I was published in the last 3 consecutive issues. I said, oh, well, then. So everything he mentioned, I had already done.
So basically, write it yourself.
Well, what happened at the end was I told him, well, I have one writing mentor who gives me occasional advice, but he's so busy that he doesn't have too much time to get into the nitty gritty of the writing. But he told me after reading the article in USA Magazine, look, there's great writers there. They're not all creative writing instructors, but there are professors who do creative writing in their spare time. And there are some amazing writers there. UCLA is already using your story. So if they're going to march your story out for the Dog and Pony Show, there's a move to be had here where you get them to allow that memoir to be the work you're doing at UCLA. I said, if you don't do it that way, you just try to squeeze it into your classes, into the parentheses, you're either not going to finish or you're not going to like the product. And he said, well, that sounds like sage advice. Did you accept it? I said, yeah, I try to take the advice of mentors if they've won Pulitzers for literature. And he said, when was this? I said, 2021. He said, Mitch Jackson is your mentor? And I said, well, I mean, he's giving me a little advice. And he said, okay, well, Mitch is a friend of mine. So if you're making this up, it'd be pretty easy to check. And I said, okay. And unbeknownst to me, he was texting Mitch Jackson under the table. And I guess Mitch texted a picture of him and me in Atlanta at the Free the Vote conference. And as I was walking out, he goes, hey, I'll take you on next quarter. So last quarter, I worked with Justin Torres, got the first 80 pages. He made me change the entire structure of the book, what I was writing, how I was writing it, and I'm really happy with the results. So my previously complete 330-page book is now only 80 pages complete, but I think it's a lot better.
Incredible. Okay, we're gonna change just a little bit of the direction. So I know that you have a new project. So lay it on us because it's pretty exciting.
I will. So I did find the poem, Pen America.
Okay, you go. Yeah.
The poem actually leads right into it. So Penn wrote me, Kate Meisner wrote me. She's been the director of the Penn Prison Writing Program for the last nearly decade. And she wrote and said, we'd like to commission you to write a poem for the World Voices Festival. So Penn does this big event every year in New York, the World Voices Festival it's basically to give the unheard a chance to be seen on stage and have their works heard. So there are third world countries, mental institutions, prisons, jails, and these are people that have their work. So I sent the work. So if you Google my name and I think it's 2019, To Be Heard, which is the name of the poem, it will then go to this poem. And Jacoina Vinson was the name of the poet who performed it. So he did kind of a cold reading of my poem on stage. And then behind him was my name up there, which is cool because the guy looks vaguely like me. So I sent the picture to my dad and said, Dad, it's Black me. Look. And so he and I kind of tried to stay in touch. And I mean, he was really cool. So I was pretty happy with that. And that poem I wrote became kind of the kernel of something I wanted to do for myself for a nonprofit. So it's called To Be Heard.
Okay.
If a tree falls timber in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? If not, how lonely for the tree. Leaves whispering lonely words like only and please hear me. My thoughts remain in the stars, no voice. I remain behind bars for a choice to abandon myself to the wild, defiled, now branded like the X on my file. I am an ex-offender, shipped fourth-class mail from the public defender. I am an ex-citizen, recidivism cautionary tale, ex-con expected to fail. But I fly in the face of expectations, embrace the odds against me. The harder I'm pressed, the sweeter the victory. I now understand that the greatest need in humanity is simply to be heard. The need of the child is to be heard. The need of the victim is to be heard. The need of the poem is to be heard. I know why the cage bird sings, to be heard. And I will be heard because my need for you to hear me is deeper than the tendency of society to ignore me, out of sight, out of my mind, with this longing just to be heard. And you have it in your power, you see, to give the greatest gift to me, greater than gold or sympathy. In fact, you're giving it now. What strange and beautiful irony, how by drinking these words with your ears, you are quenching my thirst to quell my fears. I am not asking to be coddled, but this message in a bottle is my heart laid bare, unprotected, flawed phoenix for a moment resurrected, reborn in the moment you don't fear me. If you can hear me, put your ears to the bars, hear my mind whispering down from the stars. Just to lend me your ear is to give me the world, to let flaming phoenix wings unfurl. See the miracle before you clearly. I will give you my heart if only you will hear me.
Incredible. That was sincerely beautiful. Very, very. So many great lines. I had a little bit of line envy there.
Line envy?
So, I did. I had some line envy. That was incredible. Okay, so that is going to come into you speaking about your new project. Let's hear that.
Yes. So what happened is, I mentioned before about having this artist on my show. His name is Garen. He is now an advisory board member on my show. He also works with Ben Free Project. This happened because some of the people I was meeting as a result of this project were really well known, including Mitch Jackson, who had already been tapped by these guys inside just from writing letters and meeting with people. And these guys are incredibly prolific. I don't think they sleep. But they also got a hold of Natalie Diaz, who won the Pulitzer for poetry. So these people got online and promised support for this program, Bars Behind Bars. And I met them because there was a man named Dwayne Betts, Reginald Dwayne Betts, who has an American Book Award for poetry. And also, oddly, he wrote, his memoir was called A Question of Freedom. And when I was in class with Justin Torres, he made me read like 9 memoirs during that period. And one of them he had me read was Dwayne's. So I was reading this book, or listening to it on Audible, driving on the freeway to San Diego. And then while I was listening to a book, I got a text from Dwayne saying, "Yo, B, where are you at tonight?" And so I took a screenshot of it because I thought my life's getting weird right now. Like the people that I'm reading their books and being assigned from school, and those people are texting me because I'm now involved in literacy work. And so he brought some other people, and he brought a person into my orbit who changed a lot of things. The man's name is, if you're a poet and you like poetry history, this guy's name is Dr. Randall Horton.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Horton is often considered to be the only black beat poet. This guy is amazing. He is the only tenured professor in the U.S. with 7 felony convictions. He has a jazz band called Radical Reversal that goes into prisons and institutions, installs recording studios, and then plays jam sessions with some of the inmate musicians, records it, puts it online. But when he leaves the recording studio in place and then goes on to the next place. So he's here on a grant to do that.
Incredible.
He went in with Reginald Dwayne Betts, he has a nonprofit called Freedom Reads. And he partnered with this amazing architect, and they made these really cool maple and cherry wood kind of curvy, intentionally made curvy so that the swerves will distract people from the boring and oppressive institutional straight line sameness of prison. But Dwayne is operating on a $2 million grant from the Mellon Foundation right now. And they install these libraries all over the place. With each one houses 500 books that Dwayne felt were the most formative and transformative for him in his change. So he went into one of these events with this guy, Randall Horton, and they met with a bunch of the people, and they were so impressed with these 2 guys that they said they wanted to help him out. So they reached out to me. They gave me this guest, Garen. The person who brought Garen ended up bringing more people, and pretty soon this became a repeat thing on my show. So now each time I have a show, I have a musical performance. So obviously that changed the viewership capacity. We started switching to video format. And so benfreepodcast.com and benfreeproject.org are both going live this month. The .org will be live very soon. Randall was a big help, and he started talking to me about what I was doing. I explained that I wanted to do some nonprofit work. I offered to help him and sort of volunteer. And he finally called me once, and we talked for, I don't know, an hour and a half. And so long that I looked at the clock and said, "Oh, Doc, hey, I got to turn in my homework at UCLA at 11:59. It's like 11:15 right now." He said, "What do you got to do?" I said, "I have to do what my professor's calling an ad lib or a mad lib poem. I got to change one word from each line in the poem and have it still make sense." Now, my professor teaches rap as literature. He's kind of one of UCLA's celebrity professors. His name is Adam Bradley. He just wrote Common's memoir and also wrote the anthology of rap, the only academic book on rap. And the class was hip hop poetics. So I get off the phone with him. I log on and I pull up in the poem on this Canvas program, and it says Dr. Randall Horton, 1961. I went, wait a minute. So I texted Randall, "Doc, hey, do you know Adam Bradley?" He goes, "The guy that wrote Common's memoir?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "No." So wait, this is a coincidence? So it seemed crazy to me. And then I felt super pressured because now I was changing the poem of somebody I knew and respected. So finally I CC'd him on the poem and turned it in. And as an afterthought, I wrote to both the professor and him and said, "Hey, you think we could have Randall call me and Zoom in to class to perform this poem that we're analyzing for class?" He said, "Yeah, if you could get him to do that, that'd be great." So he called in and they did a question and answer thing at the end and said stuff like, "What do you think the relationship is between rap and poetry?" And he said, "I'd say they like kissing cousins." The guy's just so great. So he called me the next day and said, "Yo, B, I don't know if you're really serious about this nonprofit thing, but I get like 50 G's to install these recording studios. I can do it for like 12. He said, "But I can't keep the change and I can't give it to you, Ben, but I might be able to give it to you, Ben Free Nonprofit. So if you're serious, it might behoove you to try to hurry up this IRS process." And so I thought about it that whole night. And the next day I called him and said, "Okay, how do you do it?" So I put the whole federal and state thing. It was about $1,000 on one credit card and just decided to eat it, applied for it under Ben Free Project. And we formed it. He and Randall's one of my key board members. He's partnered with me. He has 2 American Book Awards for poetry. And his jazz band, Radical Reversal, their jazz album, Not One Real Motherfucker, was just voted Best Jazz Album of the Year by NPR. So here is the mission statement. Utilizing innovative media tools to enhance rehabilitation, reentry, and public safety, the Ben Free Project confronts the drivers of mass incarceration, recidivism, and the criminal justice system. Through curated education, training, intervention, and self-help curricula for system-impacted individuals, our mission is to create social change while centering the voices of those most impacted by the carceral state.
Incredible. Congratulations. That is another layer to your incredible story. It's like it just keeps on expanding and expanding.
It's kind of a snowball thing. Like pretty much everyone I mentioned is now on my board. Kate Meisner, director of PEN America, she's on the board.
Wow.
Dwayne Betts, he's on the board. Dr. Horton, he's on the board. And because of the people, the caliber of some of the people involved, other people have been looking at what we're presenting and wanting to create and jumping on board as well. Garen and his 3 Grammy nominations is helpful to do music. He wants to do workshops where he teaches people how to record their poetry or lyrics or rap and track it over instruments. So one of Dr. Horton's things is he brings the band in and they perform live and then record them performing live and have people perform spoken word and poetry over their music.
Incredible, Ben. Yeah, absolutely incredible. All right. I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
So we've heard quite a bit about your life story. We're gonna completely go in a different direction. This is one of my favorite questions because I take this question always reflected upon myself, because I know that if somebody asked me this question, they could ask me every day and my answers would change. Um, Name three people, whether throughout history or maybe even current day people, who you would really value to sit down and share a good conversation, a meal with, and just bend their ear about whatever you'd like.
I'm gonna say Gandhi.
Good choice.
He's entertaining. His sense of humor gets overlooked a lot.
It
They
does.
asked him what he thought about Western civilization, and he said, "Oh, I think that would be a good idea." I'd really like to hear some of his reasons for his choices in a lot of areas.
Mm.
I would like to ask Jesus some questions, like, "What did you mean by this?"
Right.
I am at UCLA's. I just finished UCLA's TV writing program, and that was a 6-week course. And we didn't hit on this, but it's very compact, and you have to do each component to finish the course. And the first day, I had to say, "Hey, I'm going to miss the pitch workshop." And they said, "You're pitching to Netflix and Prime. That's the whole reason you're paying $7,600 for this 6-week course." And I said, "I know, but I have been asked by Immortal Studios to write a graphic novel based loosely on what happened to me, where the character finds his awakening in prison. And I'm going to be speaking at Comic-Con on the writers panel in front of 350 people. I can't make it. It's the same day at the same time, and it's in San Diego." And they said, yeah, you should probably just go to Comic-Con. So they were pretty cool about that one thing. Yeah. But in that film process, I pitched a movie. So for shock value, I'll tell you, the log line is: "To pay for his dying mother's costly medicine, a retired Roman assassin must accept the contract to kill Jesus Christ." It takes place in 31 AD. And it's that story you've seen so many times in so many ways, from the perspective of an assassin who's really getting frustrated because it's not working.
Interesting. Okay. So you have one more person to pick?
Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde. Well, that's incredible.
They read off a series of 17 charges to him, and he laughed. And they said, "Are you saying these charges are untrue?" And he said, "Worse, they're badly written."
Oh, no. Incredible. Those are three. That would be a wildly entertaining dinner, I can say that much.
Yeah. All at the same time. Wow, that would be great.
All at the same time would be.
That's kind of what my board is starting to feel like, to be honest with you.
Yes, sounds like it.
I hired a company called VetCom to try to get my 100% benefits back from the military. I was able to get most of them back. I'm at like 70% or something. And as in talking about it, the woman found out that one of my diagnosis was for PTSD, which is from the military originally, but prison didn't help. And
right.
So I don't really worry about stigma about mental health and things like that. If you've been through some stuff, it's probably going to be, a reality. So, but in that process, she was saying, "Well, actually, I have a whole curriculum for PTSD and anxiety. I'm trying to get into the prisons, and for that reason, I've been trying to form a nonprofit." I said, "Well, I'm already in the prisons, but I don't have a curriculum. That's interesting." She said, "Oh, well, I'm going to turn the recording for the Zoom off and switch gears here, but what's a girl got to do to audition for your board?"
Right.
And I said, "Oh, well, let's hear your pitch." She said, "Okay, I'm the CEO of 2 different successful companies. I have been viral 6 times in the last 5 weeks for being an expert on veteran homelessness and on prison reform. And I'm running for Congress, the first conservative congresswoman that I've seen ever to run on a platform of anti-domestic violence, human trafficking, and prison reform."
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "And I'm going to win too, and it wouldn't hurt to have a congresswoman on your board."
Wouldn't hurt.
I said, I I didn't get you anything, but so she is on my advisory board, and so some of these people are so drastically different. I'm really interested to see how we can all get together to make some positive change.
Different is a good thing.
Yeah.
Everybody comes up with different opinions and brings something new to the table.
I didn't tell you. I don't think I even told you this because it just happened. But I just found out yesterday I am off parole. I can travel anywhere I want.
Congratulations.
Yes.
You can do whatever you want now. That's incredible. Wow. That just keeps on getting better and better. Okay. We are going to switch over into, we've had such a serious conversation. So that's the first part of our show, serious. The second part is shenanigans. But before we do.
I like shenanigans.
I know, right? We're going to have some fun, or we're going to try to anyways. Before we do, the last question that I ask every guest is always the same. We've had such a great discussion. It's been an incredible interview. Is there anything that I did not hit on that you would like to let the audience know before we move into the shenanigans?
Maybe just about how people can get involved.
Okay.
The timing is pretty good. I just turned in everything for the website last night. The website is supposed to go, depending on web text, live tomorrow, but either way, it'll be live very soon. And that is, you can go to benfree.org or benfreeproject.org. My branding person made me buy like 16 URLs, so you can almost get anywhere close, and you're going to get to the site anyway. But there are a lot of things that are involved in that. There's literacy, there's anti-human trafficking, there's education about domestic violence, about kids who are raised without parents, about mass incarceration. And we've collected about 23 people now that all have a great experience in these. One guy, Adamu Chen, he's on my advisory board. He just did a film about being in San Quentin during all the lockdowns we remember from 2020, et cetera. And during that time, he actually found ways to record things, not sure how still, and created a documentary that he finished when he got out called What These Walls Won't Hold. And he won the San Francisco Film Festival and was just an official Black Star selection. And he wants to teach storytelling with pictures. So
incredible. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you follow Free Ben.
Ben Free.
Sorry, Ben Free. I went back in time. Ben.
Everything's happening at once, according to my branding person who just did this campaign. Right. Everything is going to be listed. Ben Free Project is going to exist because it's the name of the company, but the essential, the media, all that's going to be under I am Ben Free. So all of the social media as well.
So make sure that you check out the podcast. Make sure that you follow him. Go check out the website. This is something that is just it encompasses so much, that there is so much to talk about, so much to hear, and so much to learn. So make sure that you go check it out. That's absolutely incredible. So I want to say thank you for the serious part of the interview. I knew that it was going to be jam-packed with information, because I know everything that you have been doing, or I've been relatively up to date. So now we're going to flip over to the shenanigans. Now, I know I didn't tell you much about the shenanigans, but
you did not.
I'm going to. So, it's just some goofy questions. Feel free to ham it up with me. That you can win some stupid prizes. So we're just going to have some fun. We're going to close out such a serious evening with some fun.
Well, if we're doing that, I'm definitely changing shirts. So you go ahead. I got to change shirts. Go ahead.
Okay, you go ahead and you change shirts.
But not on screen, I promise.
I have very high expectations of the shirt that you are going to be changing into.
You should.
And I will wait for you. So will the audience.
Well, it's only going to take a second. I'm right here.
So once again, everybody, I would like to thank you so much if you've joined us live or you're watching by replay. I would like to offer for you to hit that subscribe button that is actually up on that side. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit like for the channel. and also hit the notification bell. That way you can be apprised of all the shows that happen on this channel. There are some very exciting things that are on this channel and some that are still to come as well. I'd like to once again thank our producer for the amazing job that he always does for us. All right, let's see. You got your Comic-Con shirt on?
I guess you could call it a Comic-Con shirt, but
I'm going to. I am going to. There you go. It looks
Shenanigans
very,
Vortex.
it looks very Shenanigans worthy.
Okay, good. I appreciate that.
Okay,
I'm gonna
good.
take that as a compliment.
Okay, well, now that you've done your wardrobe change, are you ready for this? Okay, good. Ben, if you could choose between the two, which would you prefer? Would you prefer to have carrots for arms or cauliflower for a head?
Well, I just bleached my hair and I've already experienced cauliflower for a head, so I'm going to have to say carrots for arms, because in a pinch I could still dip my arms into the onion dip and have something to eat.
See, this is why we actually get along, because that is probably where I would have gone with it too, right? You don't necessarily want to eat your arm, but you can enjoy the dip stuff. Okay. You are now a thief, but the caveat is that you only take things from your victims that would slightly inconvenience them. What are you taking?
From the first person or from different people?
Just yeah, in general. What's the first thing that you can think of that you would be?
To only slightly inconvenience people?
Correct.
I would hide their keys.
You would hide their keys, not actually take them?
No, just hide them a little bit. They would eventually find them, but all those times that I've wondered, I'm pretty sure that someone is doing this to me, and I think that they're very small, and I've been unable to find them so far. But
Okay,
I feel like this is happening. You know, the irony, or coincidence rather, of that last sound effect is my professor for the TV writing course is Jill Goldsmith, who is one of the chief staff writers of Law and Order.
There you go. And I have seen her name go across. Okay, so this is probably not funny, but I definitely need to know from all my guests the great pizza debate. Are we having pineapple if we're sharing a pizza, or is this a no-go zone?
Okay. I love pineapple on pizza.
Good.
But I'm perfectly accepting of people who don't. So when I order more than one pizza, I always make sure I don't order 3 pineapple pizzas because I like odd flavors. I like
you're not
that's been soaked in Korean barbecue with spicy stuff, and not everybody likes that.
Yep.
I don't want everybody to be like
Correct.
me.
Correct. I get it. All right. So, what do you call a male ladybug? What is the name for a male ladybug?
Well, the formal name for a ladybug is a ladybird beetle. So I guess it would be a male ladybird beetle.
Okay.
If you were being scientific.
If you were being scientific. There will be no protests about your answer because it is very factual. And
Try to play it safe.
Highly disappointed.
That's good. I don't want to just halfway disappoint you.
Right.
That would be a waste of an opportunity.
It is. It's a waste. But anyways, should a June bug be allowed to hang out in July?
No, it's too hot. I don't think anybody should hang out in July.
No, just me, right? Because I love the heat, so just me.
That's true. I have seen you baking before in the last few Zoom calls.
I get it correct, right?
I'm like, is that an egg frying on your shoulder right there? Yes. I'm
just gonna let everybody know we can speak right now, but I am not leaving the sun. That is the way some of our conversations have gone. All right. So I'm gonna send something to you in the chat. You're going to open the chat. Just give me a second here. So
don't forget that while you were refining your technological skills, I was sharpening my 4-inch golf pencil in a cell. So you may have to point me in the right direction.
You will be fine. Okay. So there we go. I sent you a little dialogue in the chat. You can see it?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. So I want you to use your most sinister voice to read the statement.
My Teddy and I like our hot chocolate warm, warm, warm.
Okay. If coffee was illegal, what would its street name be?
Brown glaze.
Ooh, that's a good one. Brown glaze. Okay. So I just for that, so I hadn't given out any prizes yet, but for that one, we have coffee, a very, very, very popular coffee shop in Canada. It's everywhere, and it is called Tim Hortons. So you have won a Tim Hortons coffee.
Except
Shipping is not included.
that's okay.
Okay,
But if the show flies you out, can you just carry it?
I will.
Okay, good.
Yes, that's a pinky promise deal. If the show flies me out, I will bring a Tim Hortons coffee for you.
A separate thing that you haven't mentioned, I know that some, at least, of your audience has to be poets. For one thing, you posted something about this, and I was suddenly followed by like 16 poets within like 10 seconds. So some of them I have met, a few of them I have met in other spots. I didn't realize that I've apparently been telling everyone that I would love to be on their show, but I have to wait till after summer school. I don't remember saying this a lot, but summer school was over Friday, and I got 4 texts and emails on Saturday. So I'm also supposed to appear on 2 shows with Orion Meadows.
Yes, and I had told Orion that he must connect with you. So there you go.
Excellent.
Yes.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
I say that to mention that anybody, if there are poets here and they just like sharing stuff, feel free to just message me and say, hey, can I send you a poem? Yeah. I'd love to read it, hear it, all that.
And Ben has been in the rooms in My Starfield Saturdays, so I know he is going to be coming this weekend, if he's available, to be reading that poem that he read on Starfield Saturdays, and we welcome that. Okay, sure. Back to the shenanigans. War has now been abolished. What do you suggest that countries now do to settle their differences?
Oh, wow. I think that those giant sumo suits would be very effective.
That would be a good one.
But I would have one addition.
Yes.
I would make sure that one person, each of the 2 combatants, the giant sumo suits were made entirely of the opposite halves of Velcro. Because that would make much more interesting.
Then they stick together and they have to like pull. That's a great. And plus 2, the ripping noise. That's,
it does make it better.
That just adds some humor to it. That's a very good idea.
Thank you.
Okay. For that, you have won a seat on the sorry, I just lost it. On the peacekeeping board in Switzerland, and that seat is from a Zoom location. So you can watch from Zoom.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good prize, right?
If I'm going to be in Switzerland, I guess I should probably impart no opinion one way or the other about my being in Switzerland, right?
Well, you can, but basically, like, you just tune in on Zoom when it's on a general channel. Yeah. Okay. So what conspiracy theories have you recently started?
Started?
Yes.
Well, you said that and I flashed on an old one. Friend and I used to invent words at coffee shops where there were the most people and try intentionally to just use the word, and we would write it in a journal for when we had used it the first time to see how long it was before we heard it again.
Okay.
We did stagel, for example. Somebody said something and it goes, God, nobody says that anymore. That's so stagel. And we did it 3 times in the course of like an hour. It was 4 days, and we heard high school kids saying stagel. Granted, this was Boise, Idaho, so perhaps big fish, small pond thing going on. Yeah, but it did happen. So I think that conspiracy theories I like to start are oftentimes based on words.
Okay.
I did spread the rumor that everyone needed to leave this building as soon as possible because they were tearing it down. And it was really funny until 3 weeks later when they announced that they were tearing the building down. So I've been
So
trying
that
to
was more intuition as opposed
tone.
to a conspiracy.
Yeah, I've been trying to tone down. I mean, it worked for a while. I had more parking, less noise. People
Right?
started moving out faster.
That's the way to do
For
that.
example, there are 25 apartments on my floor, on the 5th floor here in this UCLA owned apartment, and I'm the only person on my floor because they're actually tearing it down.
There you go. As long as you actually vacate before they tear it down, everything should be good for you.
I'm not so sure. I'm pretty stubborn. We'll see.
Okay, well, we'll see. I know I'll be updated on this, so I'm okay with whatever happens. I know I'm going to get updated. That's all that matters to me. All right. So, final question. Since I know from previous conversations that you like starting rumors, I'd just like to know, is it true that you started a rumor about being on the show just so that I would ask you to book and become a guest here?
I can neither confirm nor deny knowing anything about that rumor.
All right, we play it that way. So I'm just going to reach over to my prize box. So for playing, well, I almost worded that wrong. For playing this game with us tonight.
I would like to hear the original wording
No,
that crossed your mind.
yeah, you might want to, but we're not going to do that because I do have a reputation that I like to keep intact. So
does your reputation involve not naming this portion of the show Val's prize box? Got it.
Oh, anyways, it's not quite. So we have some packing chips for you, some packing peanuts.
Oh, nice.
So we will be sending those to you. Again, shipping is not included. But again, if you
have to pay for the shipping of the styrofoam packing peanuts.
When your show flies me out, I will bring them with the Tim Hortons coffee. Promises. Okay.
But I don't want them in a box. I would like you to bring them individually.
Certainly, I can do that. I will sort them after I arrive. And the other thing is, and I do need my producer for this one because I did not get a chance to talk to our board before the show, but we always like to give our guests a gift card from Amazon to thank them for joining us. So, Quentin, are you able to let me know how much the board approved for Ben? He's checking, obviously.
Yeah, that was hold music.
This is apparently it's hold music to the board.
That will be 96 cents.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, nice.
So you're free to spend that however you like. We have no, it doesn't matter to us how you spend that, but
I don't mind either, but I would like that in crypto.
So it's an Amazon gift card, and the board's pretty firm about that. So it's an e-transfer, and it's just
because some of the crypto I've been monitoring lately, that would be nearly 30,000.
Well,
coins.
And you can take that, sure, somehow. Maybe you could sell it on some kind of marketplace and get your 97 cents and then invest it in crypto. And I mean, as I say, you can spend it however you want. So once it's yours, it's yours.
It doesn't seem as little as you might have thought it would seem, because you have to remember that where I spent a decent portion of my working life, the average pay was 8 cents an hour, and we only got 45% of that because the rest of it went to restitution. Yes. So 90 cents, that's almost like a week's pay.
Right. So you're pretty happy with that price?
I'm good, yeah.
You know what?
Unless it's $1.50 for shipping, because everything else sounds like
no. So this one is straight through Amazon, so you don't have to worry about shipping. They might charge you shipping for whatever you order, but that's on them.
Amazon Prime, I'm good with that.
There you go. So 97 cents could go as far as it'll take you.
The Rock has that $7 Productions, because he got down to his very last $7, and he was trying to decide what to eat lunch with, and he was holding off on it, and then found out that he did get the part for the wrestling thing he wanted to do, and now he never lost that $7. I think he still has it.
That is very cool.
I will frame my first 97 cents, or I think he said 96 and you said 97, but you guys got to.
I was trying to up it, so we'll see what the board does.
Thank you.
But yeah, I always try and up things. That's why the board's always on my case. Things, but yeah.
Was that the sound of the board on your case?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. I usually hear that at the end of every conversation with them. So I have a
Shenanigans moment for you.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a good one to end.
Okay.
So in a trial,
Mm-hmm.
the person on the stand is an FBI cadaver dog handler.
Okay.
Don't get too much more serious and solemn of a moment than that. But as she keeps talking, she's talking about her cadaver dog, a German Shepherd named Zeus, and she starts saying, well, at that point, Zeus realized the objection to what the dog realized, sustained. So then the dog knew the objection to
How
the
can you know?
dog's knowledge, Your Honor. So she paused and thought and tried to explain how something, she goes, at that point, Zeus became aware the objection to the dog's awareness. My lawyer stands and says, Your Honor, I want the dog on the stand and I want an interpreter. And the whole room goes, and he says, I'm sorry, it was a long night. And then we had to take a break because everyone in the courtroom is laughing at the cadaver dog handler lady. And I think it proves the need for Shenanigans because it was a horrible moment. It was totally in poor taste, but everyone needed so desperately to laugh in that moment that no one could stop laughing.
And, I think that for me, the reason why this show came to be with Serious Shenanigans is these interviews, which are quite, I try and make them very serious and in-depth. The questions are designed per guest. They're not generalized questions. I might slip the one in about who do you want to come to dinner with and talk to, but everything is designed for that guest. And they're meant to draw out and have an intense, good conversation. But there's so much seriousness in life. There's so much stress. There's so much, quick, fast pace, like, let's get it done. I like to just sit back and have a little laugh with people, hopefully a laugh with people, and ask some ridiculous questions and just have a humorous moment with somebody and get to know them through some laughter as well. So I appreciate the time that you took away from your busy schedule to spend some time with us here at Serious Shenanigans on Let's Talk and enjoy the time. Let our audiences really get to know you and what you're doing and the amazing story that you have. And I do hope that you come back another time in the future when we can get updated and hear another good solid hour of all the new things that have happened in your life. Because we just know that it's going to continue to grow.
The end of this year is supposed to be the release date for the first graphic novel. So hopefully by then we're discussing who's writing the movie for what and get to.
Incredible.
In fact, just to see the cool artwork and some of the other really cool writers, I'd really recommend it. It's under immortal-studios.com. I mean, the incredible artwork. They partnered with the Shaolin Temple because they wanted to give the Shaolin veto rights, right of refusal. If someone draws a move where there's a martial arts move and the guy's hands like this, they get to say no, it's supposed to be like this. And they make the Shaolin Temple makes them redraw the panel if it's not accurate. So immortal-studios.com, there's a lot of work goes into this and it's some really interesting stuff.
Absolutely. Ben, I can't thank you enough for your time, and thank you so much for being generous and graceful to still join us when we had to move the time a little bit later. So,
I mean, it was the least I could do after you offered all those styrofoam packing peanuts.
See, I told you that there was going to be some good stuff happening, and now you got to see it for yourself. So, yeah. But we will talk about that paid flight out to Kelly so that I can be on the show and hand you your coffee and your packing peanuts individually.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And in the meantime, once again, thank you so much. Everybody out there watching, definitely go ahead and follow Ben Free everywhere that he is. Like and subscribe to this channel so that you can watch more shows like this anytime.
Soon enough, it will be I am Ben Free.
Yeah.
But if you look up Ben Free on almost anything, you'll eventually get. Just look for this ridiculous looking mug, and eventually you'll find it.
And we will add something in the caption once this is posted. We'll get some information from Ben and have it posted in the caption so that when you rewatch the show, you find it right there and then. Thank you so much. Okay, as always, just hang on as we say our good nights and the show goes off. Just don't X out of the screen so you can chat with our producer. Thanks. Goodbye, everybody.